Tallboys and Trackmasters is brought to you by Expert Exhaust. Expect more for your money. And by Cycle Mart, your motorcycle parts store. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to episode 27 of Tallboys
and Trackmasters.
Guys, it's the best part of my week. You know that?
Yeah.
Switching it up here a little bit, I got some Yingling Flight.
Yeah, I've tried that before.
It's a new light here. I'm starting to get a little bit too fat, and the suspension's not working on the 500 anymore, so I need to switch it up to some light beer.
Truly is a tale as old as time.
How was your weekend, man?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Just went out road Saturday. There's a lot of trees down. So if the side-by-side crews don't improve some of that soon, we're going to have a chainsaw day.
Well,
especially
I know
Fetterman White Day, etc.
Yeah.
So
usually you can count on those guys a little bit, but yeah, they've been slacking lately around here.
Yeah, I can tell because I haven't picked up near as many beer cans as I normally do. I was down in the garage earlier, well before this episode, doing something a lot of new riders will never do in their entire riding career, is cleaning and adjusting a set of drum brakes on a motorcycle.
Yeah, I saw you got the old T-dub fired back up and rolling.
Yeah, I forgot how much fun that thing is, like a little scooter with ATV tires on it.
That's awesome, man. Well, we're excited to get started with tonight's episode, which we're going to talk about Dualsport myths. And there's a lot of misconceptions and kind of wives' tales, so to speak, about this sport. And you know, I think it kind of boils down to a lot of excuses that people will come up with when it comes to this kind of motorcycle discipline. So kind of excited to get in this tonight. And I guess we'll start off with one of the big ones that I hear a lot is I'm too old or young to do that type of thing. And when we were kind of doing some research and thinking about this, I was kind of stumbled upon this, which no, this isn't your Maury Povich DNA test results if you're the father or not. This is the registration packet that from all the riders we had for the 304 detour, and just kind of going over these, it was surprising. So take the average age of a guy that signed up for our hard loop, right? So what do? You add all the ages together, divide by how many there is, you get your average, right? Guess what the average age was of a rider on the hard loop?
So it had to be in the 40s.
41
Nice.
Was the average age of the guys riding the hard loop. What do you think the average age was on the easy loop?
I don't know. I haven't had a look at the AARP roster in a while.
Average age of a rider on the easy loop was 55.
Yeah, I was going to guess close to 60.
So that's very surprising. Now, you know, obviously you've got it on all ends of the spectrum. I think, probably our good friend AJ was probably one of the youngest guys on the hard loop. Yep. And one of the oldest guys on the hard loop was a man, I believe his name was Tom Skeens.
Mm-hmm.
75, I think he said he was out there, 75, 76.
And he can ride.
Oh, yeah, dude
Yeah.
could throw that thing around like it was nothing. So, yeah, I mean, you hear that all the time, especially guys maybe looking to get their start into this. Like, oh, I'm too old to get into that. That's a young man's game. And I mean, it's really just not the case, man.
Well, I see it from both sides. I see, older guys that say, I'm too late in the game to pick it up and learn. And I see a lot of young guys too that think it's, something that's just for old guys that can't race anymore. Of course, I don't have a racing background, but it's a really fun hobby as a young guy, especially if you're big on exploring and you get the adrenaline rush. And I've always just been a big fan of it personally.
Yeah, and I was kind of that camp of the younger guy that thought it was just an old man's ride. It was an old man's sport, and it wasn't fun. I mean, I remember it was probably like 3 or 4 years back. My dad and Tom King and Jason King and all those guys, just kind of really getting going with all their adventures and stuff they've had. And I've kind of seen it from afar and thought exactly what you said earlier. That's for retired racers. It's for guys that don't have it anymore and can't cut the snuff when it comes to riding a dirt bike. And I got invited to go and ride Jason's XR 650L that time. And I straight up said, I don't think this is going to be a good time. I mean, I'll go. I didn't have anything going on that weekend. And man, was absolutely just hooked and haven't looked back since. So super pumped. And yeah, that's just not the case, man. It's for everybody.
Yeah, I see, like I said, a lot of older guys that think that it's too late to learn. And in reality, it's not. Of course, I'm not old, but realistically, I hadn't been on two wheels since I was like 6 or 7 years old, and then picked it up when I was like 22, 23, maybe a little older, out of the blue. And, it's one of the best things that's happened to me in terms of, my hobbies, the friend group that I've, came to know from it, and the camaraderie has been huge. But I don't know. I think people are just way too eager to resign themselves to not being able to do anything new. I do recognize that, yes, it's it carries risk. Riding carries risk. That's something that everybody's familiar with. But unlike race conditions, you can greatly, I guess, tune the amount of risk that you're taking. So, seeing a lot of older riders and stuff like that are still chugging along, in their 60s, 70s, what have you, easy or hard loop, really gives me some hope. Something that is unfortunate is how few young people are getting into the hobby. I assume that largely it's due to the financial barrier.
Which I think that's another topic we're going to get into here shortly. But
the financial barrier is significant. A lot of people are, living with their parents till later in life. And I know a lot of that is the answer is no, absolutely not. Coincidentally, when I got my first Dualsport, it was because I'd gotten off my family health insurance plan and onto my own with my first job out of college. So that's what prompted that. And, part of me thinks that a lot of young guys that could be riding Dualsport are racing like local hare scramble and stuff like that. And, as time goes on, maybe they'll come around. The biggest thing, I guess, moving forward is just to keep this community growing and going. So, the resources are out there. There's someone that you can get a hold of. Somebody knows somebody that knows a member that can hook you up with some local rides and tips, pointers, etc. Because if we don't start inducting more people into this as time goes on, it's going to be more difficult to keep people interested in the hobby.
Yeah. And to your point there, you look at certain events around here where that's happened. There hasn't been any new blood into the sport to kind of continue and champion those areas. And you lose great rides like the Flint Ridge Dualsport because guys just can't step up and just are unwilling to do that. Kind of going back a little bit to your other point where you said, you're never really too late to learn. So as I was growing up, my dad had raced and rode a good bit his entire young adult life growing up. And then kind of same thing, has kids, has me, gets married and sells all the toys and kind of gets out of it. Well, when I got to be 7 years old, a bunch of my classmates in school and neighbors and stuff were all into dirt bikes, and I wanted to get into that too. And Dad's like, well, I used to do it, so we can get you into it too. Got my first bike, that turns into him getting another motorcycle again so he can follow me around. That turns into my sister getting tired of sitting around and her wanting to do it as well. And then really turns into my mom. My mom was tired of sitting around and watching all of us have a good time. So I think she was 32 or 33 years old before she'd ever even been on a motorcycle. And, she took to it like a duck to water. Didn't get her start until, honestly, in your motorcycle age, that's kind of late in life to get a start on riding. But, it's another thing to super awesome. And I love it every single time that all four of us can get out together as a family and ride, man. And I don't see any of us slowing down soon. Obviously Mom has her issues with her leg, but she doesn't let her get her down. And I'm pretty sure that she's going to end up coming this weekend down to Brandywine with us. So
that would be
never too late to start in life for really anything, man. I mean, I'm kind of the motto of you got to live for the day a little bit. You never know what's going to happen. You might walk out tomorrow and get hit head on by a bus and not make it. So you got to live life to the fullest. And whether you're 70 years old, it's not too late to try to learn and get out here on this adventure with us.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely don't want to be the guy that reaches the end of his life and realizes that, all the fun to be had involved risk, and also risk adverse that I, missed out on all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of, huge now core memories for me having ridden with the group, and hopefully make some more in the future.
Hey man, that's what it's all about. And, I think we've kind of touched on that too. It kind of goes with age that everybody in this group that you ride with in this sport comes from all walks of life, man. You have no idea what a guy does, for a living or how his, personal situation is or anything. But man, it's just a common thread that brings everybody together. And, personally for me, like seeing that Tom Skeens guy come up there when we were asking who the oldest guy at the ride was, basically, and he says that he's into his 70s out there doing the hard loop. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible and awesome. I hope to be half as badass as that guy was.
Stuff like that gives me hope.
And one other point as far as not being too old to do this adventure with us and with anybody really. Look at Chad Johnson's dad. The second year that we had the Dualsport ride.
Yeah.
Oh, Harold, I think he was in his 80s on a DR 200 and went and did the Easy Loop with those guys. That definitely won him the Badass Award that year for the Easy Loop.
Well deserved.
Yep. So yeah, definitely, man. You're never too old to get a start. And I mean, honestly, I don't even know what the youngest age you can get your motorcycle license is now in the state of West Virginia. If it's 16 or 18, it might be 18. But we need some new blood, man. Need some young guys to take a chance on it. Take it from me, the consummate racer that was ate up with it every single weekend. It's the most fun I've ever had on a motorcycle. I mean, racing's good and all that, and even just riding with your buddies and stuff on some single track trails is fun. But being able to get on a street legal motorcycle and see all this nice stuff that's close to your house is absolutely amazing. So we definitely need some young guys to step up and get into the sport.
So that's a good segue into the next talking point. As to, I stated I think that cost is a huge barrier to entry for a lot of younger riders. So we'll dive into that.
Yeah, it's too expensive. I can't do it. It's too expensive.
I hear that all the time, but I get on Facebook Marketplace and I have to go lock my billfold down in my truck so I don't start making stupid decisions because there are deals out there again. I know that stuff got pretty rough through 21, 22, but things are starting to normalize.
Yeah.
You do not need the $12,000+ KTM to go out and have fun. Is it more fun? Depends on what you're doing.
I agree.
But you really don't need to spend the huge amount of money that most people think you do in order to get into the hobby. I was scrolling through Facebook Marketplace or whatever back in like 2019 and found a Yamaha TW200 for like $1,200 in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And the next day I was taking off work and, had my little envelope of money, and I was over there buying it. So that's what got me started into it. And you know, I don't see anything wrong with other people taking a similar path. You don't have to start out on, the biggest bike that you can get a hold of. You don't necessarily have to start out on the KTM, the Husky, or even the DR650. If all you can get a hold of is, say, like a Yamaha XT225, man, it's got two wheels and a motor. That's that's more fun than sitting on the couch. And
Absolutely.
especially for new riders that are just getting into it, you will not outride most bikes that you can get a hold of unless you have like a background where you raced in your youth and it all just is kind of muscle memory.
Yeah.
I think people get on forums and they hear that all this bike has terrible suspension, but the guy that's typing that is a single track maniac that has the racing background and he is going to max a bike out. So for a lot of what we do, I mean, really, whatever you can get a hold of is adequate.
You said something there, kind of off camera when we was talking a little bit. I think it was earlier this week. You said that the best adventure or dual sport bike is the one that's already in your garage.
Yeah, the best bike for you to go do whatever you've got planned is probably the one that you've already got. And that's not saying like if you want to go hit triples, the perfect bike for you is a Honda Trail 90. But if you're just wanting to go hit national forest roads, ride over to Davis, do some camping off of it. I mean, whatever you got's, adequate. When I first started riding my T-Dub, I think that thing makes like 14 horsepower. And I had that thing all over Mon National Forest. Is it fast? No. Do you feel kind of bad flogging it up some of those hills? Absolutely. Is it fun? Yeah. And now that I'm in the process of getting that thing running and rolling again so I can teach Shiloh's brothers how to ride, it's kind of reignited my love for riding because it's such a non-serious approach to it. Yeah. I know that your buddy John had taken one down to Brandywine, and everybody was pretty surprised at how well it did, except me, because I already knew that those are pretty underrated little machines.
That was going to be my next point, and I kind of hate to, I wouldn't say throw him under the bus, so to speak, but yeah. So I worked with John. He went and bought that T-Dub and, really started tinkering on it. He's a tinkerer like I am. He likes modifying stuff. And just, every day you come in and ride that thing, have a huge smile on his face, just talking about how awesome it was. And, I said, man, you really need to come out with us. And then, it was kind of the excuse or I can't keep up with you guys. That thing's, it's going to hold you all back and all that stuff. And he came down to Brandywine on a whim with us and had an absolute blast and did not hold us up one bit.
Yep.
And I mean, that just goes to show you that, you don't have to have the brand new KTMs, the brand new Tenerés, all that stuff to have a good time, man. You can, whatever you've got available to you in your price range is probably adequate enough to go and have an absolute blast. I mean, look at the guys doing, around the world trips on Trail 90s and all kinds of different things like that. In the previous episodes, we've discussed, bike prices, new versus used, and then the gear. Like, you don't have to have dedicated dual sport jackets and pants and navigation. You know what I mean? Just old pair of work boots, a pair of jeans, a shirt, and a helmet, man. And just whatever you can get your hands on. I've got a 82 GS 450 Suzuki that's been converted to dual sport here. There's plenty of opportunities out there. Whatever bike you can get your hands on, as long as it's street legal, to have a good time on.
Had I waited until I had the money to get a more expensive bike, I would have missed out on 4 years of riding experience by the time that I actually got around to buying it, versus just, I think my T-Dub was like $1,200. My KLX 250 was $4,000. And then, segue from there to the KTM 350, which, is a great bike. It's a fantastic enduro machine, but, it's having ridden that my Kawasaki back to back, that KTM is not the end all be all if you're not doing single track and really challenging terrain. There's that saying, it's more fun to ride
a slow bike fast than a fast bike slow.
A fast bike slow.
Yeah.
I just had my little T-Dub out putting around local to where I live, and I'm ringing that thing's neck, and Speedo says 15 miles an hour around this little single track stuff. But it's just fun versus being on the KTM. It's like, this is kind of too slow. I need to be a little bit more aggressive with, my lines and stuff like that. So it's just different strokes. I mean, it's all fun.
Yep.
Having been on two complete different ends of the spectrum, it's
Yep.
all fun.
Yep. Yeah. And like you said, the prices of things are coming down. There's deals out there, man. I don't know how many times I scroll on Facebook Marketplace and seen KLX 250 or 300 or, DRZ 400,
Suzuki 350, one of the most underrated bikes in existence.
Yeah. Stuff under
400. But.
Yeah. Stuff that's under, $4,000. And a lot of times it comes with riding gear, helmet and gloves, goggles, everything you need to get started.
There's always people looking to get out of it.
Yep.
And the best thing about a used bike, especially one that's already got some scuffs on it, is if you're a beginner rider, you just flog on that thing. You're going to drop it no matter what you think. You go buy a brand new showroom KTM, you are going to drop it. You buy a showroom DR, you are going to drop it, and it's not going to feel good. But if it's a used bike that's already got some damage, who cares? It's part of the learning experience.
And I think as well, it's one of the cheapest off-road sports that's out there. You think about, getting into racing as a sport. Well, you're going to have a way to haul the bike to the event. You're going to be constantly changing parts because it's going through its paces as hard as it can possibly go. You've got entry fees, registration fees, membership fees. I mean, it's a lot of money to have to go through. And I see Chad Johnson has commented like a Jeep. I mean, me and you both come from the Jeep background.
Yep.
How much gas would it take us back in the day to go from here to Canaan Valley and back on all the trails and stuff without breaking everything that we had? And it's when you get almost 70 to 90 miles per gallon, depending on what kind of bike you have, gas is not expensive. You're going $5-6 for a tank and having a great time.
Yep. I do think about that a lot. I got into off-roading back when Jeep Cherokees could be had in really good condition. Like,
same here.
Little old lady drove it back and forth to church on Sunday condition for under $2,500. I think back then my XJ build had like $5-6 grand in it. Today that would probably be closer 8 to 12 because the price of everything's went absolutely insane. If you're into off-road exploration, which is why I love riding so much, it's just covering terrain, seeing new stuff, etc. I bought my first bike for less than a price of 33-inch mud terrains.
Yep.
That's huge. I mean, and that was, it's only gotten worse since then.
Yep.
So I think that I spend a lot more time on the bike, especially now because gas is so expensive. I can go explore all day on $10 and ride from here to Canaan, like you said, $10 worth of gasoline. It's really not as expensive as everyone purports it to be.
Yeah.
As long as you're not getting like a very maintenance intensive machine, when in reality, you're not the application for something like a KTM or a Husky. Like if you're just wanting to bomb down gravel roads or whatever, like a DRZ is a fantastic bike for that. If you're not a single track guy, your options are a lot further beyond just the different colors that KTMs come in now. Yeah.
And kind of speaking to the price of stuff and maybe, what bike you have in your garage is the best one for you. There's so many tire options out there these days that you may have a bike that's not really a dual sport, but if you're just wanting to explore some forest roads and some gravel roads, man, there's plenty of knobby options out there for whatever you can think of. A lot of these kind of naked sport bikes, like take the Versus that I have, for example. It's plenty of tire options out there where you can do some moderate off-roading, some gravel riding, and just get out there and have a good time. And then obviously in our state of West Virginia here, being able to have a very easier avenue to get these motorcycles that didn't have a title back in the day street legal, and the street legal kits that are out there for around $100 with blinkers and whatnot, if that's what you want to go with, man. There's plenty of options to buy something else or just use what you have laying around the barn to get it street legal and go have an adventure.
I agree. My days long, well, probably about a year and a half before I ever met FDSR members, I would meet up with my buddy Jordan that I work with at Thrasher. He had a Honda Grom that Maxxis made knobbies for. We're talking like, little scooter tires effectively that Maxxis made knobbies for. That guy was all smiles all the time. Of course, he was bottoming the suspension out on every single bump, but he was still having a good time. That really speaks to your point of with all the tire options out there, especially if you're the kind of person that likes to tinker and, you think it's fun to make something do something that's not designed or intended to do. I think something like your rat bike build is great, or the guys that take like MT-07s and stuff like that and run them off road. People put a little bit too much emphasis on, having the perfect bike to go do something that almost any bike would be capable of. You look over in like India and they're on 50cc scooters going over stuff that most people would be terrified to take a, KTM 500 over in a lot of cases. And,
I don't
did the jump that 20-some foot fence on a Triumph or whatever that had like 3 inches of rear suspension travel. I mean, it's I guess in conclusion, it's just not letting yourself get bogged down in, the ideas of what all these forums tell you need. And
so
it's such a pain to get on a forum to see new riders asking for advice. Somebody says like, oh, I want a bike that I can hit gravel and moto camp off of. And someone's like, you need a KTM 500.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Yeah. I was going to kind of get into that as maybe like a little sub paragraph of the price thing. Well, the forum said, 99% of those guys that sat there all day on a forum posting up, advice or whatever have you for bike setups, bikes, routes, whatever. They're just sitting on a forum all day. They're not getting out there and actually doing the rides, doing the legwork, and don't really have that kind of firsthand knowledge. It's the same as any kind of troll that you see on any kind of social media or anything these days, man. Take everything that anybody tells you on the internet, including us, with a grain of salt.
Oh yeah.
That it's whatever somebody else says on the internet is not the be all end all. I kind of think of ourselves as experts a little bit, but you get on these forums and see, oh, you got to have all the Clem gear, you got to have a KTM 890 Adventure, you got to do this, do that, do this. It's not the case, man. It just really isn't.
Yep. Ed March went from Alaska to Argentina on a Honda 90 scooter, not a Trail 90, just a Honda 90 scooter. One of the most interesting adventure rides I've ever seen on YouTube. But to James's point, like, my advice is worth exactly what you paid for it. And I would apply the exact same mentality to whatever you read on the forums. There's some great information out there, but man, there's a lot of guys that are just they got the horse blinders on. The only way that they understand to do it is the way that they did it.
Yeah.
So if they started out on the biggest and baddest bike that money could buy, they're going to only suggest that for new riders. And I think that, that scares some people from the hobby because they look at that and say, well, I can't justify, that amount of money for something I don't even know if I'm going to like.
Yeah. Let's go through some of the comments. We're kind of active here tonight, which is actually a really good thing. I like seeing that. First one's from Tom King. He says he's got a new one for the next ride. What do you mean, Tom? You got a new bike for Brandywine this weekend or what? Kind of curious to see that.
Couldn't be. That DR is eternal.
You know what else I'm liking? I can see everybody's name on some of these comments now.
Yep.
So that's fantastic because that's been a pain in the butt. Irish Gypsy George, I'm just a dumb flat billy with a good throttle hand. You're a pretty good rider too, buddy. I was behind you on that long run down in Elkins. You were throwing that Tenere around like it was nothing. This is from Tyler Vincent. He says that he rode behind John on that T-dub down Brandywine. Was super surprised how well the bike was working. Yeah, man. What you got in the garage probably is the best bike for you.
I'm pumped to get mine back on the road.
Tom King says if you're happy with it, then it's the bike for you. That's 100% right, man. Couldn't agree more with that. Chad Johnson says that it's way cheaper than a Jeep. Absolutely. This hobby is way cheaper than a Jeep. Irish says again that he's done sports cars, diesel trucks, 4x4s, and I'll never own another one. 2 wheels forever. Yep. I think your bang for the buck there is way bigger than any kind of other hobby, in my opinion, anyway. Our old buddy Greg Blakey says that he sold his XJ during the pandemic, bought the DR, summer and winter riding gear, helmet, MSF, of course, year of registration with cash left over. Way more fun than you ever had in the Jeep and way cheaper to actually push the limits. Absolutely.
I have sheared exactly 0 teeth off the pinion of any of my bikes.
Chad says the earliest scrambers were just street bikes with knobbies and high exhaust. Yep. And that was more than enough back in those days to get them to all kinds of epic sights and scenery around just like we have today.
And sometimes it's fun to work around a bike's limitations.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I think the reason I've come back to appreciate my Yamaha so much is, after having been on the KTM with good suspension, good power, it's really well set up for enduros, coming back to a bike that, stuff that you just zoom right through, it's more of a challenge. It kind of makes you slow down and appreciate stuff to some extent.
Yep. Chad also says that most real experts are in the garage or on the trail and not on an adventure rider all day. Yeah, and that's kind of the form that I was alluding to.
Yep.
Yeah, I get on there when I'm bored a good bit, but man, some of those guys on there just really do not have any clue.
Yep.
Let's see. Tom King says overthinking. I'm not sure who this one is. I'm not sure. With a crack block. Tom says just have fun with a new rider. Oh, that's what it means. He got a new rider with us. Okay, that's cool. Chad, overthinking, then undergoing analysis paralysis. Yep, man, that's such a good, absolutely good quote right there. Irish says, all shucks. And easier to push when broke too. Yep. It's easier to recover your stuff whenever you have an issue. One little thing that I do want to click on real quick, and you guys can kind of read as we go along here, is there's a new little feature here on our upgraded podcast where we can do a little ticker here at the bottom. So I've kind of put some industry news in there, and feel free to look at this and as we go along with our discussion and kind of comment and what have you on there. There'll be some snippets of some funny stuff in there as well. But yeah, man, like I said, I don't think cost is really a big issue, I think we've kind of beat the dead horse there a little bit on that one.
I really hope the new Royal Enfield Himalayan has the improved foot peg
in the ad.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Yep. The next thing I want to talk about is that, this isn't just dedicated to dual sport people, but also, kind of dirt bikers in general, is that we hate the environment. We're not environmentally conscious about what we do.
I'd argue the opposite personally.
Yep, absolutely. Me too.
My name in the game typically is trying to avoid wheel spin. So that puts me leagues beyond anyone in a side-by-side, because it seems the only thing those guys want to do is lock it in 2-wheel and just mash the throttle and rooster tail everywhere.
Yeah.
I'd argue that we're a lot more environmentally conscious than most other off-road hobbies.
Yep. I would 100% agree with that. You got to think just from a vehicle standpoint. We have 2 less wheels that are impacting the soil or drainage issues at wherever you're riding. It's way quieter. The carbon footprint isn't as intense as it is with any kind of off-road vehicle or side-by-side.
The amount of fuel taken to go a given distance is,
Yeah.
typically 3 times lower. Um, and to the same tune is anywhere I'm riding, I spend a good bit of time picking up litter when I have the capacity. When I was through White Day, well, I went down the backside of Valley Falls, picked up some beer cans there naturally because it was Saturday morning, and proceeded to go on to White Day and picked up some beer cans here and there and candy bar wrappers, etc. I grew up hunting with my dad, like way out in the middle of nowhere, like Helvetia, Adolph, etc. And something I could never stand was seeing litter anywhere.
Yeah, and obviously, I think a lot of us in our group do that. It's easier for us to quickly patrol a lot of our area on our bikes. Just it simply is. It's way easier to get a motorcycle through something quickly than it is a side-by-side or a Jeep. We can cover a lot more ground and kind of help maintain trails like you were talking about with the trees down and stuff. We're able to kind of clean up those messes. Obviously, our fellow side-by-side and Jeep brethren cleaning up their mess as we go. Also, I think with our footprint being as small as it is, it also opens up a lot more areas for us to be able to utilize. And then, kind of in general, I think that our sport's not really the 5:30 club. We're not stopping and drinking every five minutes, and riding for 30. So, I think that there's stigmas out there, and the dual sport community is probably on the very small end of that spectrum as far as, being negative. You still have people that trespass and whatnot, but at the end of the day, we are probably one of the most environmentally conscious groups out there. With us, obviously, FESR going down and doing the stuff in Charleston for the Country Roads Coalition. We also have, and you might see in the little ticker coming up down there, we partnered up with Tread Lightly this year. So on September 30th, we're going to all meet up probably at Hardee's in Whitehall and do a little bit of trail riding backside of Valley Falls and stuff to get over to Tigert Lake State Park and actually have a cleanup day over there. So, it's easy for us to kind of turn the other cheek when it comes to cleaning up around us and making sure that stuff's easy, for everybody else to kind of tear up. But super excited about that project. And, not all dirt bikers are bad, man. I think we're one of the most environmentally conscious groups out there.
Yep. There's some hooligans in every group, but out of the dual sport community, as far as being hard on trails, etc., I really don't see it out of our group.
No. Let's go through a couple more comments here. That was Nick that said it was easier to push when it was broke too.
Oh, good point.
Moms, remember when I had only been riding for 2 days and rode a wheelie all the way across the slate dump? Yeah.
Accidentally.
Yeah. Whiskey throttle. Greg says, any tips on a cheap, lightweight bike for learning single track and light enduro?
Does it have to be street legal?
Yeah, I think that would be a question that would be definitely need to be asked on that. But, old air-cooled 250s,
very underrated,
super cheap option. Take like a TTR 230, an old XR 250 or 200, something like that. Super cheap. It's light, and you're going to be able to throw it around through the single track stuff pretty easily. It just depends on how much you want to spend, I think.
If you want to mess with gearing, you take a Yamaha XT 225. I don't know when they stopped making them, but you can get them for relatively cheap. And if you're not planning on going over, say, 40 miles an hour on single track, you can gear it accordingly and have a pretty decent little machine for next to nothing.
Yeah. Chad Johnson says we do way less damage to a trail than a quad tart or even horses. Yeah, that's definitely true.
A lot less poop too.
Well, depends on what we ate the morning of the ride to say that, I'd say.
I guess that's fair.
Rob says back in Jersey, there was organized trash cleanup days in the state forest. They were open to everyone. 90% of the attendees were from various enduro clubs. Very few Enviro Nazis ever showed up. And that's a really good point, because you have a lot of these people that complain about the trash or the impacts and all that stuff. Well, what are you doing to go out there and help mitigate that? Nothing. You're
Nothing.
sitting in your room and being a keyboard warrior.
Yep, you're just complaining.
DRZ 400E, yeah, that'd probably be a good option too.
The E's are the kickstart models, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're significantly lighter than a street legal DRZ too.
Yeah.
Start DRZ.
Greg says it doesn't officially need to be street legal. I'm fine with the 2-stroke even. Just needs to appear legal for official dual sport events.
It needs to be street legal for our dual sport event. We're going to do a hard loop. It has to actually be street legal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, man, I mean, that's I think that's a good point that, I think our environmental impact is small, and it's something that might be overlooked by a lot of guys, but, it's out there for sure.
Agreed.
What else we got you think of?
Well, we talked about, the forum trolls, the keyboard warriors, the dudes that live in their mom's basement and, hang out on the forum all day. So let's talk about physical fitness. Let's talk about physical demand. There's a misconception out there that this is no more physically demanding than riding your couch of a Harley down 79. Could not be further from the truth.
No. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Especially once you start doing more hardcore dual sport, say like our hard loop, cardio and strength, whatever, conditioning wise, I'm in pretty good shape. And that stuff just wears me out after long enough.
Yeah, you got to think that just in general, riding in itself is a physical thing. You are constantly putting input into the bike to make it do what you want it to do. So if that's standing up, putting input into the handlebars, you are constantly moving. You're not just a stationary Harley guy on 79 going wide open.
It's constant micro corrections the entire time you're riding, especially you start hitting like, gravel they just laid down or creek rock or loose dirt. Typically I go without riding for like 4 months, 5 months sometimes over the span of winter. And my first ride out, my hips and stuff and arms and everything hurt because, there's muscles that I'm not using even in the gym that are all my stabilizer muscles that I use pretty much only when I'm out riding. So you start thinking about that versus, the guy running down a straight stretch of road on a Harley, like there is next to zero required input.
The only input on a Harley is if there's clippings in the road and you got to lay her down.
Yeah, the only input for a Harley is laying her straight down the second you see grass clippings or some gravel on the road.
Come back, Deborah. I miss you.
Deborah took the kids. No, it depending on what you're doing, it's pretty physically demanding. Even just riding gravel, if you ride gravel all day, you're still going to be pretty wore out because, like you said, it's just all these micro corrections that you might not even be aware of the whole time you're riding.
Obviously you have the elements too. It might be a hot day out. You're going to be sweating regardless how fast you're moving. And then, it literally will take a physical toll on you just putting in the miles. It might not even be that hard of a ride, but just covering that distance and being subjected to, headwinds that you're riding into, like you said, micro corrections all the time, utilizing your legs, your back muscles, your arm muscles, and just covering distances will take a toll on you, man.
And let's face it, ergonomically, most of the things we ride are terrible.
Yes.
I mean, you can get, your bar position, everything lined out to get your upper body situated. But, a lot of bikes, unless you want to do lowered foot pegs or a raised seat, if you got longer legs, especially on like a Euro frame, like a KTM, kind of squished up. Your knees are bent at, more than 90 degrees, and you spend 8 hours on that, even trying to go between sitting and standing, after a full day, you're going to feel it.
Yep. Yeah, you constantly have, obviously vibrations from the engine coming in through your hands. You got motor vibrations, And also, I think it's a point to be said for being, that hyperly mentally alert as you're riding.
Yep.
As some of us are, not all of us, but that takes a toll on you as well, as constantly having to look ahead and judge what you have to do coming up. I know we talked about that on a previous episode, kind of the mental game of it, but
and especially you start getting into terrain you've never ridden before.
yes,
your brain's taking in all this new information constantly.
yep,
And
it takes a toll.
It does exhaust you over time. Absolutely.
Yep, and that's not counting, riding something very, very, very hard that's going to require you to, you wreck the bike, you got to pick it back up and push it through something, lift rocks and trees and logs and what have you out of the way, all that kind of stuff adds up, man. There's been several times where I've been at the end of a riding day and been like, why am I so tired? That really wasn't that hard of a ride, but you just, it does. It physically and mentally takes a toll on your body. Well, I'm trying to think of some other ones that we had. I had it right down here. Talked about that one. I know one that's a little bit I hear sometimes is, oh, I don't like riding with big groups. I want to ride by myself. And that's up to you. I mean, some guys are just like that, but for me personally, I don't like riding by myself. I'd rather have that camaraderie and if God forbid something happens to you, you got somebody there to maybe help you out a little bit too. So, to me, that's kind of a dual sport myth.
Yep. I don't know. I'm on both sides of that. When I first started riding, I rode alone a lot. And of course, the day I met you guys, I was going off to ride alone. And even now that I ride with groups, even small groups, big groups, whoever's available that day. If nobody else is, I'll still go out and ride by myself. I just take a lot fewer risks because there's nobody out there, and chances are I don't have service, and et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I've had a lot of fun riding by myself, but every time I have a cool new experience when I'm riding alone, my first thought is I got to share this with somebody. I got to call up the guys and get them out there and show this to them, whether it's terrain or a location or a route, what have you.
One maybe kind of on that subject a little bit that I actually have heard people say before is clubs or organizations are bad for the sport. And I honestly don't think that's true at all. Now, you can have any amount of fun you want to have and not have to be a part of a group or a club or anything like that. But honestly, I think that it enhances the riding, it enhances the sport when you have a collection of like-minded people that can get together and ride together, promote the sport, and just kind of share ideas or even routes and stuff together to just help everybody out in the long run. I mean, I'm very, very biased, but I think I've been a part of a lot of off-road clubs growing up, and the West Virginia Jeep Club, which kind of fizzled out, and some other riding clubs and stuff. But for my money, I think Fairmont Dual Sport Riders is one of the best ones out there. We've got a good core group of dudes and ladies especially that care about everything. They care about the sport. They care about bettering their surroundings and everybody, and lifting everybody up around them. And there's not really a whole lot of bickering, and that's the one thing that can happen to a lot of clubs is you have disagreement of ideas, and it just kind of leads to the end. But there's really not a whole lot of drama, and I think we all get along very well. And I think we're a very, very good group of dudes and ladies.
It is one of the most non-club clubs I've ever been a part of. It really just feels like a large group of like-minded people, which is a complete rarity when you start thinking about like Jeep clubs you've been a part of, etc. Excuse me.
Yep, for sure.
It is, also pretty much the antithesis of gatekeeping. Is it's like, John, it's like, you got TW200, you need to come out with us. Period.
Yeah.
Quit making excuses. Get out with us. Versus, I've seen Jeep clubs say like, well, you got to have 37s and air lockers to go up Rich Mountain and Elkins. I'm like, oh, cool. I took my XJ up there when it was stock on like bald road tires. People tend to make Dualsport a lot less of their whole identity, I've noticed, than like Jeeps or overlanding or something like that.
Yep.
More that, the person's an individual that does this as a hobby as opposed to someone who, gets their sense of self-worth through this hobby.
Yep. Yeah, you're 100% right, man. And that's a good point. There really isn't, to my knowledge, a whole lot of gatekeeping in our sport. That's a big thing, that you do see in the side-by-side or the Jeep world where, like you said, oh, if you don't have long travel suspension and lockers, you can't come with us. I don't care what you bring. If you show up on a Honda Grom to one of our rides, I'm going to be right behind you and just want to see you try to make it through everything. I'm going to be right along there with you, helping you through all the stuff, man. It's, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, and that's even goes for our routes. If you want to come ride with us a couple of times, we'll show you some fun stuff around here. And if you don't ever come ride with us again, I'm not going to be upset about it. There's a lot of guys that aren't like that, where they want to keep secrets and keep the routes and the trails closed to them. I mean, other than the private property sections that we do for our event, everything else is a county road. I mean, I don't really care if you find it on your own or not, but
yep.
Yeah, that gatekeeping aspect kind of rubs me the wrong way.
That's huge in the Jeep community.
It is. It really is. And I don't know. I think we may have touched on this earlier in a previous episode a little bit, but I saw something that kind of made me mad. You have a lot of guys in our sport in this area that put out several different types of routes available for you to go ride. And I'm of the mindset that if the person that did that and put all that legwork in provides it for free, then that's their MO. If they want to charge for it, that's fine too. They're the original creator of that route. But I've seen several things here recently where guys have straight up copied and plagiarized that route, and they're charging money for it. I'm going to go ahead and kind of throw one under the bus here just because I think it's BS. But there was a guy that came up in some conversations with some other guys in our industry that I think it was ADV Tim. He is charging $25 for the GPX file for the Tour to Coalfields, which is 100% free. You can get it from Laney, and even Brian has
Laney Hoosier.
So, yeah, let's not do that, man. Come on, that's totally bullshit.
I was on the board for kind of this area on ADV Rider, and I happened across somebody that was selling routes. I'd argue that most people don't have a better understanding of Mon National Forest and the West Virginia portion than me, having grown up there. And, my dad had me all over the place up there in my youth. And his route going through there was taking roads that I'd never seen before. Reason being, they're all gated permanently. Like there is no access. I know for a fact that, most of his route that cuts through Mon National Forest is gated. You will not get through it without having to trespass effectively on, federal land.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's easy to just hop on Google Earth and make a route and then charge people for it. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got people that see what they want to check out and then actually go out and ride it to make sure it's passable, get an idea what the terrain's like. Are there any gates? Are there any limitations? I can't remember the guy's name from ADV Rider to save my life, but I do recall that. So that made me really wary of, you pay for this GPX route and say you take a week off work, you got a really busy job, you only get, X number of weeks off a year, what have you. You go out, try to ride this, boom, gate.
Yeah.
Well, now you're stuck scrambling, trying to find a way around that. And you try another section of the route, it's like, boom, another gate. Because the guy that you bought this from spent zero time actually verifying anything.
Yeah. That's a great point, man. Great point. Let's go through some more of these comments here we got. Appreciate everybody tonight. Mom says, remember when I only have been riding for, oh, we already went that one there. Let me go down here a little bit further. Let's see. Got one here. It says, once you make an E-model street legal, they're still heavy. Mine weighed in 297 pounds dress with fuel. Also, it's very tall.
That's still less than CRF 300.
It's true, with better suspension.
Way better.
Rob says, Kicker DRZ 400. Kicker DRZ is a way to go. More horsepower than an E-Model 2. Tom King says, conditioning. Yeah, we talked about that. You need to be in some decent shape to be able to do this. You know, and I'm not talking, you know, chiseled god bodybuilder, but you need to have some endurance. I think, and some cardio. That's probably the biggest thing that's going to help you out there in your conditioning. John says he doesn't ride year round. Paul Kohler, good job, brother. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Chad says, but there's always an old fat guy that looks like he's in terrible shape, but he never screws up and never gets tired. Yep.
It's true.
Lots of guys out there like that. The bike does all the work is what I've heard. Yeah. Yeah. I found in my travels that the bike maybe makes up 15% of the total of your riding ability. You know, we've definitely talked about that on a previous episode too. Yep. We have. Juan says, anyone who doesn't think it's a workout needs to go 200 miles of even an easy ride. Yep.
Yeah, you need to go to an iron butt Tom King ride.
Yep. Tom says wind pressure. Yeah, that resistance on you all day long is something.
Yeah, especially if you don't have any fairing or anything like that, which a lot of us more hardcore guys don't want because it get in the way. And the wind buffeting sucks.
Iris says, Chad Johnson, he's trying to be that old fat guy. Chad says, my hero. Jamie Thomas. Hey, Jamie, how are you, man? Following Tom King all day completely wipes me out. Like you said, it's a Tom King iron butt ride, man. He covers some miles. Says, Rob, what is the Kicker DRZ? Isn't that the E-model? No, the E-model is the electric star one. Super fun, though. K-model previous to E. It's the Kicker. Chad says he's learned to enjoy riding with a group after meeting the FDSR kids. Kids, come on now. Ira says he's ridden around 100,000 miles alone, would much rather ride with people that ride the like I do and have a good time. You know, and that's the thing. It does take time to find that guy, that group of guys or girls that, you know, you like, your riding skills are kind of a similar level and you have similar interests and stuff, you know. And I'm kind of the faster side of that. I know there's some guys that don't like that. They want to stop and take breaks, and I get it. I can get along with everybody pretty well, though. Let's see. I think this was Tyler, maybe. Since I got into dual sport, I've done nothing but try to get more people into dual sporting. Yep. And we appreciate that to grow the sport.
Absolutely.
Jamie Thomas, pleasure to meet the FDSRs. Yes, sir. Pleasure to meet you, man. Being a rider is more important to us than what you ride. Absolutely. Tom says, ride every weekend if you want to go get a hold of me. Be aware, I rarely do less than 200 miles. That's very true.
Very absolutely.
Tom's the only guy that has 1 million miles on a DR650.
Yep.
Ira says, I don't build anything off of Mass Google. I ride everything, then build a route. Yeah, you have to. If you're not doing the legwork, you're not going to be able to have a successful ride. Anything else you can think of on this topic, man?
No, I think we've covered most of the major myths, you know, at least the ones that I've experienced over the years. So,
yeah. Well, we definitely have a fun weekend planned this weekend. I have been looking forward to this ever since the 3 or 4 detour was over, honestly.
Me, you know, you guys and some mineral waters. It's going to be great.
It's going to be a good time, man.
We're going to get nice and hydrated. And if we're lucky, we might even be sober enough to ride bikes the next day.
Well, you know, I know my plan is tentatively, I don't want to spoil this, but I will kind of leave everybody that's out there watching and listening that there is a route being put together that I think is going to be one of the most epic dual sport and adventure motorcycle routes on the East Coast. Part of what we're going to do this weekend is explore one of those roads that's going to be a vital connector to get from one side to the other.
You mean we're not just going to check it out on Google Earth and then
No, we're going to go ride it and check it out, make sure it's open. But yeah, think about checking that out and then kind of maybe heading up to Spruce Knob. I'm kind of ashamed to say this. I've never been to Spruce Knob ever.
You from around here, boy?
I am, boy. And I've never been to Spruce Knob in my entire life. So
Spruce Knob.
It's super close to where we're going to end up over there. So we're going to go up to Spruce Knob and then just kind of play it by ear after that.
Well, I'm even more excited now. I haven't been I was up there last summer when I took a week off and rode National Forest. So
yeah, I'm excited for it, man.
It's good to go back.
Let's see. Bill Parsons, this buddy I work with from Facebook there. He's never been on Dualsport Governor, but would love to try one. Keep up the good work, baby dog. So there's a guy that retired from Novellis there a couple weeks back. Kovach and Brian Kovach. And my locker was right down beside him at the plant. And every single day we would walk in and there'd be a guy down there listening to Governor Jim Justice's updates during COVID. And he's talking about, all the deaths that they had that week from COVID. And, I don't want to ruffle any feathers and I don't want to get into a political debate here, but the governor's going on there and he's going off talking about how we had a 99-year-old man from Cabell County pass away from COVID. And I'm like, every guy that the governor was talking about on there was in their high 90s. And I'm like,
if you'd have sneezed at him, it would have probably been curtains.
I mean, that's not to say that maybe COVID didn't kill him, but I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that could kill them. Sneezing too hard, wiping their butt the wrong way. There's a lot of stuff when you're at that age that can take you out.
One drop of hot sauce, who knows?
But I have a knack of kind of being like a parrot and being able to do like imitations a little bit. So I was kind of laughing at this whole speech and kind of come up with my own. So I think I went off on a tangent saying, we had a 984-year-old gentleman from Marshall County pass away. He was our last living Civil War veteran. Now, it's just sad. We are losing our veterans to COVID.
We're losing our wisdom.
So those guys obviously were rolling after I did that. And then that turned into a whole deal where every morning I go down there, I'd have to talk like the governor for him.
James, well, I've been friends for so long, and I didn't know that you could do a Jim Justice impression.
Well, he just, obviously for like 2 or 3 years wanted me to do that every single morning I came in. And I kept doing it for him. Well, found out he was going to retire for his last day at the plant. They had a big dinner for him, and I dressed up like Jim Justice, had a little baby dog and everything in a full suit, and sent him out in style. So that's why Parsons was saying that. Iris says, thank you guys for doing this. Look forward to Tuesday nights. We do too, man. And we appreciate you all tuning in, man.
Lunch for you.
It's definitely a highlight of my week. And as long as we can keep coming up with ideas, we'll keep doing this. I know we got some stuff in the works. We want to get together and actually do a live one together. I think that would be a fun time if we can get a studio set up. I've kind of got my new little setup going here. I think it's probably big enough for us to both do it together.
Well, you can see the lack of racing plaques and trophies on the wall behind me. So,
hey, man, it's a lot of money on the wall right there for a $5 trophy.
That's a lot of soft tissue damage. There's an ACL, MCL, PCL.
Absolutely, man. I know one that we may try to do. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it next time just because we're both so busy, but a Japanese 650 shootout. My parents
really want to make that happen.
Yeah, my parents. So my mom has a KLR 650. Dad obviously has his XR 650L. My sister has a DR, and they're all pretty similarly set up. So I want to get over there and just do like a shootout between the Japanese 650s. I think that would make a really, really awesome episode.
Yeah, I I'd really like to do something like that.
Yeah.
Of course, I've got a little bit of experience on DR650, thanks to Tom King, but I'll keep my biases aside. You know, it'll be nice unbiased testing.
Yeah. All right. One last comment here before we sign off for the evening. Greg says he had an interview for a big promotion yesterday, and all he could think about was how much more nervous I was the last time I did some single track. Dualsport makes regular life easier.
It's true.
Yep.
Conquering your fear of, say, hill climbs or stuff like that, like, makes you a lot more comfortable with the trials of everyday life. Same with like trying to max out and push yourself in the gym. It's when stuff comes along that it's uncomfortable or has to be done. It's a lot easier.
Or when you get to Thorn Springs Park in Franklin on a Friday evening and there's 230 packs of PBR in there, and you know it's all got to get drank, and you got to push yourself.
Buddy, I've never asked for a lighter load, but I've asked God for broader shoulders.
And a little bit better liver. Well, on that note, we're going to sign off for tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. It's like we said, it's something that we all look forward to every single week.
Yep.
And we continue to thank you all for watching and support. Please subscribe on my YouTube, Right Cycle Works. It helps out the channel over there now that we've been broadcasting on that side. And hey, man, thanks again for everything.
Yep.
We will see you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Signing off.
Yep. We'll see you guys.